11 years had passed since Maya had last stepped foot in her childhood home. 11 years since the night she had walked out with a heavy heart, leaving behind the life, the family, and the expectations that had once defined her. She remembered it vividly, the argument with her parents, the harsh words from her sister, and the sense of suffocating injustice that had driven her to pack her bags in the dead of night. She hadn't looked back, not then, not for years. Now, standing at the edge of the sprawling venue where her sister's wedding was taking place, Maya felt a strange mixture of anticipation, apprehension, and a quiet, simmering anger. The air was warm and fragrant with flowers, laughter echoed faintly from the grand hall, and the sound of music drifted toward her, punctuated by bursts of joyful chatter. She adjusted her mask, a sleek, elegant piece designed to obscure her identity, and took a deep breath. No one here would recognize her. At least, that was the plan. Maya's departure all those years ago had been brutal, not in the sense of violence, but in the quiet, cutting betrayal of those she had trusted most. Her parents had chosen to favor her younger sister, Lila, in every possible way: gifts, opportunities, attention, and approval. While Maya had struggled to build a life from scratch, navigating hardships without guidance or support, Lila had been nurtured, encouraged, and celebrated for accomplishments that, in Maya's eyes, were sometimes smaller or less significant than her own. The wound had never fully healed, the injustice had festered, quietly shaping her decisions, her ambitions, and her longing for acknowledgement. The invitation to Lila's wedding had arrived unexpectedly, a delicate envelope with elegant gold lettering. Maya had stared at it for days, torn between resentment and curiosity. Part of her wanted to stay away, to avoid the sting of seeing her family and her sister thriving in the ways she had been denied, but another part, the part that had spent years imagining how she might finally assert herself, recognized an opportunity. Not merely to attend, but to enter a world she had been excluded from and to observe, plan, and perhaps deliver a subtle, unforgettable reckoning. As she approached the entrance, Maya felt the familiar pang of anxiety. 11 years had changed her, she was older, more refined, and confident in ways she hadn't been as a young woman. She had cultivated success, independence, and a presence that demanded attention, even if it wasn't yet recognized in this room. The mask she wore served a dual purpose: it concealed her face, and it allowed her to become a silent observer, a ghost in the midst of a celebration that had once excluded her. Inside, the hall was a swirl of color, light, and movement. Guests in ornate attire mingled, laughing, toasting, and photographing moments that would be remembered for years to come. Lila was radiant in her wedding dress, a vision of elegance and joy, unaware that her older sister had returned, unannounced and unrecognized. Maya's heart tightened, not from jealousy, but from the weight of memories and the strange, simmering anticipation of the evening ahead. She found a quiet corner, observing interactions with careful attention. The way her parents beamed at Lila, the way relatives fawned over her sister's appearance, the way friends whispered compliments and congratulations, all of it was a reminder of the favoritism and the years of exclusion she had endured. Maya allowed herself a brief smile, not of malice, but of recognition. She had changed, and so had the circumstances. The power dynamics were shifting, subtly, invisibly, with every step she took through the crowd. Her mind drifted back to the past, to the night that had defined her departure. Lila had received an extravagant gift, a car, gleaming and new, with a red bow that seemed almost like a mockery in Maya's memory. Maya had been handed a small, token amount of cash, $2, to be precise. Her parents had smiled and said, "It's not about the money, it's the thought that counts," but the sting of inequity had cut deeply. That night had crystallized a long-standing pattern of favoritism, dismissiveness, and emotional neglect. It had set her on the path that had led to this moment, 11 years later, masked, prepared, and quietly determined to witness the culmination of a life from which she had been excluded, and perhaps to influence it in ways they could not anticipate. As the ceremony progressed, Maya noticed the way the guests interacted, the subtle social hierarchies, and the unspoken dynamics between family members. Her parents were oblivious to her presence, absorbed in their pride and excitement for Lila. The observation was bittersweet. It reminded her of the distance that had grown over the years, but also of the opportunity that lay before her. In this room, she could move unseen, plan carefully, and perhaps deliver a subtle, unforgettable message without a single word. Yet, as she watched Lila exchange vows and smile radiantly, Maya felt the first stirrings of doubt. Revenge, even subtle, was never simple. Could she attend as a ghostly observer and simply leave, or did she intend to reveal herself, to confront the injustice of the past in some form? The question gnawed at her, and she realized that part of the power lay not in what she did, but in the choices she would make. Each decision carried weight, the potential for satisfaction, regret, or unexpected consequences. Maya slipped further into the crowd, observing from different vantage points. The familiarity of her parents' faces, the laughter of extended family members, the radiant joy of Lila, all of it was filtered through her awareness of history and hurt. 11 years had taught her patience, strategy, and subtlety. This moment was a test of all three. Could she navigate the emotional turbulence, the psychological tension, and the moral implications of her plan with clarity and control? Her thoughts wandered to the notion of identity. How much had she changed, and how much did others truly recognize her? She had cultivated success, presence, and poise, but these were invisible under the veil of memory, time, and her deliberate disguise. There was a strange thrill in this anonymity, the ability to enter a space once closed to her, to witness, to evaluate, and to plan, all without detection. It was both empowering and disorienting, a heady mix that fueled her quiet determination. As the reception began, Maya positioned herself strategically near the main hall entrance. She watched interactions with precision, noting patterns, alliances, and vulnerabilities. Every smile, glance, and whispered conversation was a data point, informing the subtle, deliberate strategy she was crafting. Revenge, she understood, was not a matter of instant gratification. It was a long game, requiring patience, observation, and impeccable timing. By the time the dinner was served, Maya had mapped the room in her mind: who might notice her, who would underestimate her, and how she could navigate the environment without detection. Her plan was not to humiliate or confront openly, but to orchestrate a moment of revelation, one that would be unforgettable precisely because it came from a place of controlled, deliberate presence. She wanted to shift perceptions, to assert identity and capability in a way that could not be ignored, and to do so in a manner that left a lasting impression on those who had once overlooked her. As she moved discreetly among the guests, Maya felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The power of observation was intoxicating, but it also carried risk. One misstep, one accidental recognition, could unravel the carefully constructed plan and diminish the impact she sought. She reminded herself to stay calm, to maintain composure, and to allow the unfolding events to guide the timing of her eventual revelation. The evening's festivities continued, each moment layering tension and anticipation. Maya could feel the weight of the years, the gravity of the betrayal, and the potential for transformation in the space around her. Every interaction, every subtle observation, was a step closer to the climactic moment she envisioned. The question remained: would she emerge as the ghostly observer, a silent testament to years of resilience, or would she reveal herself and confront the injustices of the past in a carefully orchestrated, unforgettable way? As the night wore on, Maya remained poised, patient, and calculated. She understood that the true power of her return lay not in anger or spectacle, but in timing, subtlety, and the undeniable impact of presence. The wedding, the celebration, and the years of absence had created the perfect stage for a reckoning that was entirely under her control. And somewhere in the midst of the music, laughter, and whispered congratulations, Maya felt the first spark of opportunity, the moment when observation would transform into action, and when the sister who had been invisible for 11 years could finally, decisively, make herself seen. Maya settled into a quiet corner of the reception hall, her mask in place and her posture calm, but her mind was anything but still. She could feel the years of absence stretching between herself and the family she had left behind, each memory sharp and vivid. She remembered Lila's laughter, her parents' proud smiles, and the countless times she had been overlooked, dismissed, or compared unfavorably to her younger sister. The sting of those years had never fully faded, it had simply transformed into a quiet, simmering determination to reclaim control. As she observed the room, Maya noticed the little details that had eluded her parents' attention: the way they hovered over Lila, subtly reinforcing favoritism even in public; the way extended relatives whispered compliments and shared knowing glances that excluded her; the way Lila basked in adoration, unaware of the complex emotions swirling around her masked sister. Each detail strengthened Maya's resolve. She didn't want to embarrass anyone, not yet. She wanted to demonstrate, in a single unforgettable moment, the consequences of invisibility and neglect. Her mind turned to the idea of timing. Revenge, she understood, was most effective when carefully orchestrated. A sudden confrontation could elicit shock or anger, but subtlety would create a lasting impression. She began to map the evening mentally: when the speeches would occur, when to position herself for maximum visibility, and how to craft her entrance so that recognition, when it came, would be undeniable and unforgettable. At that moment, a waiter passed by, balancing a tray of champagne glasses. Maya allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. It had been 11 years, but she had learned the art of observation, the power of timing, and the strength of presence. She realized that she had spent the past decade cultivating not just independence, but also the skills necessary to navigate complex social dynamics with precision. Tonight would be the culmination of that growth. Despite the careful planning, a knot of anxiety tightened in her chest. Revenge, even subtle, was a psychological tightrope. She wrestled with the moral implications. Was it fair to orchestrate this revelation, to confront her family indirectly, even if years of neglect and favoritism had caused pain? Could she achieve satisfaction without causing unnecessary hurt? Maya reminded herself that her goal was clarity, acknowledgement, and recognition, not humiliation. The satisfaction she sought was not derived from punishment, but from visibility and validation. As she moved through the crowd, Maya noticed her parents again, engrossed in conversation and laughter. They were blissfully unaware of her presence. For a fleeting moment, she felt the old familiar hurt, the exclusion, the dismissal, the favoritism. But it was tempered by the awareness that she now held the advantage. Time had changed her. Absence had refined her. An opportunity had brought her back into the same room with the power to craft a moment that would linger long after the celebration ended. She began to consider the practicalities of her plan. What would she wear to ensure that attention would eventually focus on her? How could she position herself so that recognition would occur naturally, yet dramatically? Each decision required precision. Every misstep could dilute the impact or, worse, expose her too early. Maya realized that this was more than a social maneuver, it was an intricate psychological strategy. As the evening unfolded, Maya observed interactions with increasing acuity. She noted subtle alliances and unspoken hierarchies among guests, the way certain individuals naturally drew attention, and the fleeting moments when her presence could be highlighted for maximum effect. Her sister, radiant and laughing, was the focal point of the room, but Maya began to see cracks in the attention, moments when conversation lagged, when eyes scanned the crowd, when a whisper drew a glance. Each of these moments was an opportunity. Maya also considered the emotional stakes. The years of absence, the betrayals, the favoritism, they all fed into a complex web of motivation. She realized that revenge, in its most potent form, required not just action, but emotional resonance. The impact she sought was psychological, a quiet yet undeniable revelation that would shift perceptions without direct confrontation. It was the difference between mere anger and lasting recognition. Her thoughts drifted to Lila. Her sister had lived a life seemingly free of the struggles Maya had endured. Yet Lila was not inherently cruel, she had simply benefited from circumstances and choices made by others. Maya decided that her approach would not involve direct accusation or resentment. Instead, it would be about demonstrating presence, competence, and self-assurance in a way that could not be ignored. The revelation would speak for itself, leaving no room for dismissal or minimization. Hours passed in a blur of observation, careful positioning, and mental rehearsal. Maya practiced subtle movements, adjusting her posture, her expressions, and her positioning relative to her family and other guests. She was conscious of every glance, every whisper, every moment when attention could be directed toward her. It was an exercise in patience, precision, and psychological timing, an orchestration that required every ounce of focus she could muster. By late evening, Maya felt a surge of readiness. She had navigated the reception with quiet confidence, gathered the necessary observations, and identified the optimal moment for her revelation. The speeches were approaching, the room would be focused on Lila and her parents, and the timing could not be better. She positioned herself strategically near the entrance to the main hall, ensuring that when the moment came, all eyes would inevitably turn toward her. The knot of anxiety returned, stronger this time, mingling with anticipation and a strange exhilaration. She reminded herself to stay composed, to allow the plan to unfold naturally, and to maintain the moral clarity that had guided her decisions. Revenge, she repeated silently, was not about inflicting pain, it was about reclaiming visibility, asserting agency, and creating an unforgettable, undeniable impact. As the first speeches began, Maya felt the room's focus shift toward the speakers. Her parents were at the center of attention, beaming with pride and oblivious to the silent observer in their midst. Maya's mind raced, mapping the precise moment when recognition would occur, when her presence would resonate fully, and when the psychological weight of her return would make itself known. She allowed herself a final, steadying breath. 11 years of absence, countless moments of exclusion, and years of personal growth had led to this point. The plan was in motion, the timing was precise, and the impact, if executed correctly, would be undeniable. Maya was no longer the overlooked sister, she was a force of presence, patience, and calculated intention. As the speeches concluded, the room's attention began to drift, scanning the crowd for the next focus. Maya saw the opening she had anticipated. With careful steps, she moved forward, each movement deliberate, controlled, and designed to attract attention naturally. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from the intensity of anticipation. She had waited 11 years for this moment, and now it was finally within her grasp. Her parents glanced around, their expressions shifting from casual engagement to curiosity. Something in the room had changed, a subtle shift in energy, posture, and presence. Guests began to notice as well, their attention drawn subtly yet inexorably toward the masked woman moving with quiet confidence through the crowd. Maya felt a surge of satisfaction. The moment was approaching, the moment when her absence, her resilience, and her return would be fully acknowledged. She had orchestrated every detail with precision, and now the culmination of years of exclusion and personal growth was about to manifest in a single, unforgettable revelation. The room hummed with conversation as Maya moved deliberately through the crowd. Every step, every tilt of her head, was calculated to draw attention without seeming forced. The speeches had ended, laughter and applause still lingering in the air, and the guest's gaze naturally began to wander. Maya could feel the energy shifting around her, subtle, imperceptible at first, but growing with every measured step. She paused near the center of the room, giving herself the perfect vantage point. From here, she could see her parents laughing with relatives, Lila speaking animatedly to friends, and the overall flow of attention in the room. She took a slow, steadying breath, recalling the years of absence, the months of reflection, and the deliberate planning that had led to this precise moment. 11 years of exclusion, neglect, and favoritism had culminated in this single opportunity to make her presence undeniable. Maya removed her mask, letting it hang delicately from her wrist, as though it were a natural gesture rather than a reveal. The air seemed to still, almost imperceptibly, as the eyes of those nearest her began to register something unfamiliar. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some guests tilted their heads in curiosity, uncertain why this elegantly poised woman seemed both familiar and unrecognizable. Her parents' laughter faltered. Her mother's eyes widened, a flicker of recognition flashing across her face, quickly suppressed. Her father's expression shifted from casual engagement to a mixture of surprise and hesitation. Lila froze mid-gesture, her bright smile faltering as she instinctively scanned the room, sensing something was amiss. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Maya's gaze swept slowly across the room, meeting the faces of her family one by one. Her voice, calm but firm, cut through the murmurs. "Hello, everyone. It's been a long time." Silence followed. Then, her mother gasped, the recognition dawning fully. "Maya?" Her father's hands went to his mouth, eyes wide. "Is it really you?" Lila's eyes went from confusion to shock, and then to a dawning awareness of the years that had passed. She took a hesitant step back, trying to process the presence of the sister she had barely thought of in a decade. Maya's poised demeanor, her elegance, and the confidence she radiated were unfamiliar, almost startling in contrast to the memory they had of the younger, more timid girl who had left 11 years ago. Maya allowed herself a small, controlled smile. "Yes. It's me. The sister who left because she felt invisible, overlooked, and undervalued. The sister whose efforts, feelings, and dreams were often dismissed in favor of someone else." Her words hung in the air, calm but charged with emotion. The room's energy shifted palpably. Guests whispered to one another, sensing the significance of the moment, the culmination of years of absence and unresolved tension. Her parents struggled to find words. Her mother's voice trembled slightly. "Maya. We didn't know." Maya held up a hand, stopping the flurry of apologies before it could begin. "I'm not here for apologies. I'm here to be seen. 11 years of absence, countless missed opportunities to be acknowledged, and years of navigating life on my own have led me to this moment. And now, I am here, fully present, and undeniably myself." Lila's face was a mixture of guilt, surprise, and awe. She took a cautious step forward.
I didn't know it affected you that much.
I didn't realize." Maya's gaze softened slightly but remained firm. "It wasn't about hurting anyone. It was about showing that I exist, that I matter, and that the choices made years ago do have consequences. The absence of recognition, the favoritism, the dismissals, they shaped me, yes, but they also revealed my strength. And strength deserves acknowledgement." Her parents sank into nearby chairs, the weight of realization settling over them. They had favored Lila, assuming the younger sister needed guidance and that Maya would manage on her own. They had underestimated the resilience and quiet determination that had grown in their absence. Now, confronted with the transformed woman before them, they understood the depth of what they had overlooked. Guests continued to murmur, the energy thick with curiosity and awe. Some had witnessed Maya's departure all those years ago and could hardly believe the woman standing before them. Others had only known Lila or the family superficially and now saw the sibling they had never truly appreciated. The impact was undeniable. Maya's presence commanded attention, respect, and a profound recognition of her journey. Maya stepped closer to her parents, her posture calm but resolute. "I didn't come to punish. I came to demonstrate that invisibility has consequences. You may not have seen me, may not have appreciated me, but I am here, fully realized, and I expect acknowledgement, not just for tonight, but for all the years that followed." Her mother's voice broke through, soft and trembling. "Maya. We are so sorry. We never meant to. We didn't realize." Maya nodded, allowing a moment of empathy. "I understand. But it's not just about understanding, it's about recognition. Recognition that my absence, my independence, and my accomplishments have their own value. Recognition that favoritism and neglect are noticed, even if silently, over the years."
Lila, still processing, whispered, I didn't know it hurt you so much.
I never thought about it." Maya's eyes softened. "I know you didn't. And this isn't about blame. It's about ensuring that my presence, my journey, and my choices are seen. For 11 years, I had to make my own way, and now you get to see the result. Recognition isn't about pride, it's about truth." The tension in the room gradually shifted from shock to reflection. Guests realized that this was more than a dramatic reveal, it was a statement about resilience, agency, and the power of deliberate presence. Maya's return was not just physical, it was emotional and psychological, a demonstration that absence had transformed her and that recognition was earned, not given. Her parents, slowly regaining composure, nodded. "You've grown into an incredible woman, Maya," her father admitted quietly, voice thick with emotion. We see that now." Her mother reached out tentatively. "We are proud of you. Truly. For who you've become, and for how you've handled these years." Maya allowed a small, genuine smile. The confrontation she had planned was complete, not through anger or humiliation, but through undeniable presence, careful timing, and the silent power of years lived with purpose. She had not sought to punish, but to reveal, and in that revelation, she found satisfaction. Lila stepped closer, her voice soft.
I want to understand better now.
I want to see you, really see you." Maya's gaze met hers. "That's all I've ever wanted. To be seen, acknowledged, and understood. The rest is up to how we move forward." The room's energy shifted again, now softer, reflective, but still charged with the weight of the revelation. Maya had orchestrated her return with precision, balancing moral clarity with psychological impact, and the result was undeniable. She had been recognized, valued, and respected, without diminishing anyone else in the process. As the evening continued, Maya moved among the guests, subtly interacting, sharing conversations, and demonstrating the confidence and poise she had cultivated over 11 years. Every gesture, every word, reinforced the narrative she had carefully constructed. She had survived exclusion, built herself independently, and now commanded recognition not through confrontation, but through presence. Her parents followed, observing the woman their younger daughter had become, slowly internalizing the lesson she had delivered. Recognition, they realized, could not be demanded, it had to be earned, experienced, and witnessed. And tonight, they had witnessed it fully. By the end of the evening, the tension had transformed into quiet respect, acknowledgement, and an understanding of the impact of years lost to favoritism and neglect. Maya had delivered her subtle yet powerful revenge, not through anger, punishment, or confrontation, but through deliberate, undeniable presence that forced recognition, reflection, and respect. As the wedding reception slowly wound down, Maya found a quiet corner near the grand windows of the hall. The night outside was cool, the lights of the city twinkling faintly in the distance, and the music from the remaining celebrations drifted softly through the air. She allowed herself a moment of stillness, letting the tension of the evening dissipate. The plan she had spent months preparing, years, really, had unfolded exactly as she had hoped. She had been recognized, acknowledged, and respected. Her subtle, calculated presence had delivered the impact she had sought without resorting to confrontation or cruelty. Her mind wandered over the events of the night. Each glance, each whisper, each moment of hesitation from her family had confirmed what she already knew. She had changed, grown, and cultivated a resilience and poise that demanded attention. Recognition, she realized, was not something that could be demanded, it was something that had to be earned, demonstrated, and revealed with careful intention. 11 years of absence, she thought, had been her greatest teacher. Her parents approached cautiously, their expressions a mixture of pride, regret, and newfound respect. Maya could see in their eyes the understanding that had been absent for over a decade. They had underestimated her resilience, her intelligence, and her ability to navigate the complexities of life independently. Now, confronted with the undeniable presence of the woman she had become, they seemed to grasp the consequences of their favoritism and neglect. "Maya," her father began, voice quiet but sincere, We see you now. We realize what we've overlooked, and we want to acknowledge you properly." Her mother nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "We are proud of you, truly. For everything you've accomplished on your own, and for the strength you've shown through the years." Maya allowed herself a small, controlled smile. "Thank you. That's all I've ever wanted, to be seen, to be acknowledged, and to have my presence recognized. Not out of obligation or guilt, but because it's the truth." The acknowledgement felt satisfying, but not in the way she had initially imagined. The satisfaction was not rooted in revenge or punishment, it was rooted in the quiet, undeniable power of presence, in the validation of her years of struggle and independence. She realized that revenge could take many forms, and the most profound form did not involve confrontation, it involved demonstrating worth, resilience, and agency in a way that could not be ignored. Lila approached next, her expression tentative.
I never realized how much I took for granted.
I thought everything was fine between us, but I can see now that it wasn't. I want to understand better. I want to really see you." Maya's gaze softened. "That's all I've ever wanted. Recognition and understanding, not anger or blame. The past is the past. What matters now is how we move forward, and how we respect each other's presence and achievements." The tension between the sisters began to ease, replaced by a fragile but growing connection. 11 years of separation, misunderstanding, and neglect had created a chasm, but the events of the evening had begun to bridge it. Maya had demonstrated that absence had not diminished her value, and that presence, deliberate, confident, and undeniable, was a powerful form of assertion. As the night drew on, Maya reflected on the lessons she had learned. Revenge, she understood now, was not about inflicting pain or humiliation. True revenge, the kind that brought satisfaction without destruction, involved asserting agency, demonstrating capability, and reclaiming recognition in a way that demanded attention. It required patience, strategy, and a deep understanding of human behavior. And when executed with care, it could transform relationships rather than destroy them. Her parents lingered nearby, hesitant but attentive. The evening had forced them to confront the consequences of their choices, the favoritism, the neglect, the assumptions they had made about Maya's resilience. And while apologies were offered, the true impact lay not in words, but in the undeniable presence of the sister they had once overlooked. Maya also considered the psychological journey she had undertaken. The years of absence had been painful, yes, but they had also cultivated resilience, independence, and clarity of purpose. The subtle revenge she had orchestrated was not about vengeance in the traditional sense, it was about self-assertion, recognition, and demonstrating the consequences of exclusion. In achieving this, she had reclaimed a part of herself that had long been denied. She thought about the future, and how the dynamics of her family might change. The evening had shifted perceptions, and while the wounds of the past could not be erased, acknowledgement and respect had been established. Maya felt a quiet sense of empowerment, an understanding that she could navigate relationships on her own terms, assert her presence without apology, and demand recognition without confrontation. As the final guests departed and the hall emptied, Maya stood by the window, gazing at the city lights. The night had been transformative, not because of drama or spectacle, but because of the quiet, deliberate assertion of self. She had orchestrated her return, navigated complex social dynamics, and achieved recognition in a way that was both impactful and morally grounded. Her parents approached one last time, their expressions softer, more contemplative. "We hope this marks a new beginning," her father said quietly. "A way to move forward with understanding, respect, and acknowledgement." Maya nodded. "It does. And it's up to all of us to ensure that recognition and fairness guide our relationships from now on. The past has taught us lessons, but the present and future are where our choices matter most." As she left the hall, Maya felt a profound sense of closure. The subtle revenge she had orchestrated had been effective, not because of confrontation or humiliation, but because it revealed truth, demanded recognition, and asserted agency. She had reclaimed her identity, demonstrated her strength, and forced her family to acknowledge the impact of their past choices. Walking away from the wedding, Maya felt a mix of relief, satisfaction, and hope. The journey had been long, the emotional stakes high, but the outcome was clear. Recognition had been achieved, relationships had been subtly reshaped, and the consequences of neglect had been revealed without destruction. She understood now that revenge, when executed with strategy, moral clarity, and purpose, could empower rather than harm, transform rather than punish, and ultimately bring a profound sense of satisfaction. As the night air enveloped her, Maya allowed herself a small, contented smile. 11 years of absence, years of reflection, and months of careful planning had culminated in this moment of quiet triumph. She had returned, been recognized, and reclaimed her presence, and in doing so, had discovered that the most powerful revenge is not about inflicting pain, but about demonstrating strength, resilience, and undeniable value. The city lights shimmered in the distance, a reminder that life moves forward, and that the choices made today echo into the future. Maya had chosen her path with care, and the consequences of that choice had reshaped not just her own narrative, but the awareness and understanding of those who had once overlooked her. The evening had been a victory not of spite, but of presence, and in that presence lay the quiet, enduring satisfaction of justice tempered by wisdom. The morning after the wedding, Maya awoke with a quiet sense of clarity. The city outside her window was bathed in soft golden light, the sounds of early traffic and distant voices forming a gentle backdrop to her thoughts. The events of the previous night played through her mind, not like a dream, but like a carefully rehearsed memory, vivid and precise. She had orchestrated her return, claimed her recognition, and asserted her presence without the drama or malice she had once imagined necessary. Her phone buzzed intermittently with messages from relatives and friends who had witnessed her reveal. Notes of astonishment, admiration, and curiosity had begun to arrive even before sunrise. Some expressed regret on behalf of her parents, others expressed amazement at her transformation, and a few simply congratulated her on the courage and elegance with which she had handled the situation. Maya read them carefully, letting the words settle. She felt satisfaction, yes, but it was not the fiery, consuming satisfaction of revenge. It was quiet, steady, and profound, the kind that comes from knowing she had reclaimed her identity and earned acknowledgement on her own terms. Her thoughts returned to her family. The subtle shift in their perception was palpable. Her parents, for the first time in over a decade, had truly seen her, not just as a daughter, but as a person with her own life, choices, and accomplishments. The years of neglect and favoritism could not be erased, but acknowledgement had been established. That recognition, Maya realized, was the true reward, far more potent than any dramatic confrontation or vindictive act could have been. Lila had reached out early that morning, a message tinged with vulnerability. She wanted to talk, to understand Maya's perspective, and to begin bridging the years of distance that had separated them. Maya's reply was measured, thoughtful, and reflective. She emphasized that the past could not be changed, but that the future offered the possibility of mutual respect, understanding, and a more balanced relationship. It was a response shaped not by resentment, but by insight, a demonstration that revenge, when tempered with moral clarity, could be transformative rather than destructive. As Maya reflected further, she considered the lessons embedded in her experience. Revenge, she realized, was often portrayed as a dramatic act of retaliation, a way to inflict harm or assert dominance. But her own experience had revealed a different path. True revenge, the kind that leaves lasting satisfaction, did not rely on cruelty or spectacle. It relied on presence, recognition, and the quiet assertion of value. It was strategic, deliberate, and psychologically nuanced. And most importantly, it could bring resolution without perpetuating cycles of pain. Her parents had reached out as well, cautiously at first, offering apologies that were heartfelt and sincere. Maya listened without interruption, acknowledging their words while maintaining the dignity and distance she had cultivated over the years. She did not need immediate reconciliation, but she recognized the sincerity in their attempts to bridge the gap. The acknowledgement she had earned in the wedding hall was now being extended into conversation and reflection, a continuation of the subtle, lasting impact of her return. The reflection extended beyond her family. Maya considered her own personal journey, the years of struggle, independence, and growth that had shaped her into the person she had become. 11 years of absence had been painful, yes, but they had also been formative. She had learned resilience, self-reliance, and the importance of strategic thinking in navigating complex social and emotional landscapes. These lessons, she realized, were as valuable as any recognition or acknowledgement she could receive from others. In her quiet moments that morning, Maya thought about the nature of justice and fairness. Life had dealt her a series of challenges, neglect, favoritism, and exclusion, but she had responded with deliberate action rather than anger. Her subtle form of revenge had demonstrated a principle far more powerful than punishment: presence, recognition, and the assertion of personal value. It was a lesson not only for her family, but for herself, that empowerment often comes not from conflict, but from clarity, strategy, and unwavering self-respect. By mid-morning, Maya began to take small steps to reconnect with her family, guided by a deliberate intention to balance empathy with self-respect. Conversations were tentative at first, but they grew in depth and honesty. Her parents admitted their oversights and expressed genuine curiosity about her life over the past decade. Lila shared memories, reflections, and regrets, and for the first time, the sisters engaged in dialogue that felt authentic rather than performative. Maya listened carefully, speaking with honesty, and allowing space for mutual understanding. The reconciliation was not instantaneous. Years of absence and emotional distance could not be erased in a single conversation. But Maya felt the subtle shifts, the small acknowledgments, the careful attentiveness, the growing awareness of her presence and agency. These were the moments that mattered most, the indicators that her subtle form of revenge had not only delivered recognition, but it also created the possibility for genuine connection and respect moving forward. In the days that followed, Maya reflected on the moral dimensions of her actions. She understood now that revenge is often a double-edged sword. The desire to assert oneself in the face of betrayal or neglect can be powerful, but unchecked, it can perpetuate cycles of hurt. By exercising patience, strategy, and moral clarity, she had transformed her desire for revenge into a constructive, empowering act that reaffirmed her identity without inflicting unnecessary pain. The satisfaction she felt was profound precisely because it was grounded in principle, not retribution. Her own personal growth was evident not only in the recognition she received, but also in the way she navigated her emotions. The bitterness and resentment that had once fueled her thoughts had been tempered by reflection, strategy, and self-awareness. The evening's events had allowed her to assert herself fully while maintaining dignity, empathy, and moral clarity, a rare and powerful combination. Maya also considered the ripple effects of her actions. Her parents, confronted with the undeniable presence of their once overlooked daughter, were prompted to reflect on their own behaviors, assumptions, and biases. Lila, faced with the consequences of past favoritism, began to see her sister as an individual rather than as a secondary or peripheral figure. The subtle, indirect nature of Maya's revenge had created awareness and reflection that would extend far beyond the single evening of the wedding. In the quiet of her own space, Maya allowed herself a moment of gratitude. She had returned, observed, and asserted her presence. She had reclaimed recognition without resorting to confrontation, humiliation, or bitterness. She had transformed the raw emotions of exclusion, neglect, and favoritism into a powerful, deliberate act that affirmed her identity and reshaped perceptions. And in doing so, she had discovered a deeper truth. True revenge, when executed with patience, strategy, and moral clarity, does not destroy, it empowers, enlightens, and transforms. By the end of the week, the family dynamic had shifted subtly but meaningfully. Conversations were more considerate, acknowledgments more frequent, and the awareness of presence and agency more pronounced. Maya maintained her independence, but she also allowed for connection, guided by the principle that recognition and respect could be asserted without confrontation. The long-term effects of her subtle revenge were evident not only in her family's behavior but also in her own sense of empowerment and clarity. Maya reflected on the broader lesson of her experience. Revenge, she realized, is not inherently destructive, it is the intention and execution that determine its impact. When guided by principle, strategy, and moral clarity, it can assert identity, demand acknowledgement, and create opportunities for reflection and growth. The satisfaction derived from this kind of revenge is enduring, nuanced, and transformative, far surpassing the fleeting gratification of anger or retaliation. As she looked back on the wedding, the mask she had worn, and the careful orchestration of her presence, Maya felt a profound sense of closure. The past had shaped her, the absence had strengthened her, and the subtle act of reclaiming recognition had delivered both validation and empowerment. She had confronted neglect, favoritism, and exclusion not with bitterness, but with deliberate, undeniable presence. And in doing so, she had transformed not only her own narrative, but also the awareness, respect, and behavior of those who had once overlooked her. Maya stepped out onto her balcony that evening, the city lights stretching endlessly before her. She breathed deeply, feeling a quiet, enduring satisfaction. The revenge she had sought was complete, not through punishment, confrontation, or humiliation, but through presence, strategy, and moral clarity. She had been seen, acknowledged, and respected. She had reclaimed her identity and agency. And she had done so in a way that left space for connection, understanding, and the possibility of genuine reconciliation. In that moment, Maya understood the ultimate lesson of her journey. Revenge is not measured by the harm inflicted on others, but by the empowerment, clarity, and recognition it brings to oneself. And as she gazed at the city lights, she knew that 11 years of absence, reflection, and careful planning had culminated in a moment that was not only satisfying, but transformative, and that the true power of presence, when wielded wisely, could reshape lives, relationships, and the very way people are seen. Maya smiled, letting the warmth of that realization settle over her. She had returned, she had been recognized, and she had reclaimed her presence, and in doing so, she had discovered that the most enduring revenge is not one of conflict, but one of quiet, undeniable truth.